He's gonna come in. He's reimagined it. He must be mad.
Should have got a cigar.
He must.
I definitely went into this album with some trepidation. I wanted to give it a chance. He was a crucial member of Pink Floyd, despite what some people might think. It wouldn't have been Pink Floyd if he hadn't have been there. But that being said, Pink Floyd was made up of the group. There was no one part that was more important than any other, to be honest. When Syd Barrett left, their direction took a complete turn, and when Roger left, it changed again. That's just the evolution of these things. When Speak to Me came on, I immediately loved it.
This is nice. Oh, this is good.
The original Speak to Me was really cool because it was actually put together by Nick Mason as almost like a foreword to the whole album. He took little snippets from here, there and everywhere throughout Dark Side of the Moon, put them together and turned them into a very interesting, almost climactic intro, if there is such a thing. As far as I can see, all of these reimaginings within this album are done exclusively by Roger. Looking at the track listing, he has actually credited, you know, his former bandmates with regards to these songs. So it's not like he's just taken, I don't know, let's look here, Time and taken away everything that everybody else had input. He has actually credited them. But yeah, overall, this first song, brilliant. Loved it, really enjoyed it. Breathe starts off a little bit differently to the original as well. It has a spoken word passage at the beginning, which I'm always in two minds about. Spoken word passages for me are never, like, they don't rank highly up there most of the time. This wasn't really an exception, to be honest. Sort of. It'll become clear in a minute. It wasn't so much breathe as in breathe in the air and go forth. It was more a case of breathe in the air and exhale. And inhale. It was a lot more, it felt more tranquil, a bit hypnagogic.
This has got a lot of what made the original very good, so...
This is a stripped back version at the end of the day, so, you know, you'd expect it to be missing certain elements that you probably hold quite dear from the original, which is fine. But he kept some of the really core characteristics that made Breathe a really nice song, a really evocative song. It's just that it's evoking different feelings now.
This is a lot more heartfelt, I feel.
Now, remember that I was saying about that spoken word intro that I wasn't a huge fan of? It did actually kind of tie in. Because as I was listening to the first part of it, I actually genuinely forgot parts of the original song. And then suddenly, right at the end...
I thought the introductory words of this song were a little bit weird and unrelated, but it actually does work once you go through the whole song. It kind of ties back in.
Another great thing, just to gush over the original Dark Side of the Moon again, is the fact that it incorporated instrumental pieces and actual songs. It had little spoken word passages, you know, just dotted in here and there, and it also had some pieces that didn't even have lyrics at all, but still had vocals. So the fact that Roger has come along and put words onto some of the instrumentals here...
Okay. I mean, this one used to be an instrumental, so the fact that he's now putting lyrics over it, or words over it at the very least, has really changed what's going on here.
Sometimes lyrics don't make something better. Words don't make a piece of music better. What you want is for people to be able to interpret their own thing. Roger's not trying to do that here. He's really projecting what he's feeling and seeing in the world onto this music, rather than into in some places. I always interpreted On the Run to be more about fear and trying to escape, whereas this seemed a little bit more violent than I was expecting. Time is easily my favourite Pink Floyd song out of all of their discography, so it was going to be interesting to see what he did with this one. Most interestingly, this is the song on the album in which he still credits all four band members in the lining notes, so there's no way he could take too much away from it.
Spooky. But with a weird, hopeful yearning.
Oh, some great use of theremin in this song. I love the theremin. It's such a cool instrument. I wrote down some notes as I was listening, and I described the original as being about time rushing past, which was perfect for going after On the Run. As I was saying, On the Run for me was more about escaping, and then Time was of time rushing past you as you were running along. Whereas now, On the Run to me felt more about catching up with someone else, maybe, and Time is now about time having passed you by already.
So far, the album's actually really good. That hits differently somehow. In a good way.
They don't link quite as closely now, I feel, mostly because of how he approached the spoken word passages and On the Run. So I've lost something from that, I feel. But the Time itself, as a song in Redux, is still actually rather good. You know, it still feels nice to listen to.
Cancer. They've reached the end. There is only one road.
Great Gig in the Sky. Let's talk about that. I didn't really react to it much when I was, as in physically react to it when I was listening to it before, so I haven't got any clips of that. But I've written down some notes here. It starts with spoken word, as do most of these pieces, of letters between Roger Waters and somebody called Kendall. Now, it's all about the death of Roger's friend Donald Hall. So there's a much more personal touch in this. The working title before Dark Side of the Moon first came out for this song was the Mortality sequence. No prizes for guessing why. The original was definitely much more about living than dying. It had these screaming heavenly orgasmic wails from Claire Tor, absolutely incredible. This one doesn't have those wails. Instead it has a really deep husky rendition, of kind of humming of that same melody that Claire Tor actually wrote herself for the song. It felt a lot more like falling at peace with death rather than celebrating life. Which, considering the subject matter of the intro sequence of this song, yeah, okay, kind of makes sense actually. As reimaginings go, also very good, a lot darker.
It's a gas. Grab that cash with both hands.
And now we've reached the elephant in the room, or the elephant on the album, which is the song Money. I thought maybe in the context of the whole album itself, because it is a concept album, maybe it would make more sense. Maybe it would hit a little bit differently. It didn't.
Thinking about it, the original version of Money almost sounded sarcastic with how it was singing about money. But this one is a lot more cynical. It's not so much being sarcastic as it is just sort of being kind of like, ugh, capitalism.
I kind of see what Roger was going for here, and at the same time I still don't think it fit. I literally wrote down here that I still don't get it. That's my main note to take away from this. Which is a terrible shame. You know, I feel like he could have done many things with Money, but he chose not to.
I mean, the orchestration is cool. This still isn't working for me. This is nice.
Us and Them to me was always a very dramatic song. You know, it really tried to showcase that, you know, there's people over here and there's people over here. What's going on? And that's kind of how what this album has done. It has divided a lot of people. It's got some people who are saying, it's like, look, you can do what you want. And there are some people who are saying, what the hell's he done? He's mad. And he does lean into that to a degree. You know, he's aware of the things that he is doing. I just don't think he gives a shit.
Good use of acoustic guitar in this album, I've got to say. It's very well placed. He's made it a lot more organic, this album, which is nice. it does feel more human in many places.
This is a very nice sounding album, though. It doesn't have all of the interesting colours and all of the interesting tones of the original Dark Side of the Moon, but because it is stripped back a lot, it has really given like the few lines that are in each song a lot more room to breathe. Almost, actually, it still feels powerful. However, I'm still not a huge fan of the vocal style that he's taken here.
Roger can't seem to decide whether he wants to sing or talk. I think he should lean into one rather than the other. He does seem to be mixing and matching it a little bit. He could have had a lot more effect. And I think musically, I think it just would have worked a lot better had he instead just stuck with one style a bit more.
The other main instrumental on the album is, of course, Any Colour You Like. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was partly confused, but mostly amazed at the kind of sounds that were coming out. It was probably the song that first showcased to me that it doesn't just have to be like chords solo in order to be a decent piece of music. It can be, you know, it's the spaces in between what's playing that really makes the bits that do get played seem bigger and better, actually, and hit harder.
He said the thing! Yeah, I think this just definitely worked better as an instrumental. The vocals and lyrics add nothing to it, really, in my opinion.
To put lyrics onto Any Colour You Like was a bold choice. Once again, not one I'm necessarily here for. Although it is kind of interesting to note that he said the title of the song in the song. This was a strange one for me. This was a strange one. Not so sure. It was one of the low points of the album, definitely.
I like the vocal style going on here, and the vocal effects.
When Dark Side of the Moon, the original, came out, there was a lot of electronic influence and input. Obviously, you know, synthesizers, electric organs, electric guitar. This is a lot more human in many respects, which is great. I think for a reimagining of a 50-year-old record by an 80-year-old man, I think that was actually probably a good idea.
I just realised that I really like this bit of the song, but it might be because it actually sounds most like the original.
If you try to put too much like of the original electronics into it, it would have sounded... It wouldn't have had any impact. You would have missed out on so much. It would have sounded disingenuous because we know that Roger isn't that kind of musician. It would have sounded very unexpected, which is in this case, it's the wrong kind of unexpected. Trying to make it more human, I think, was a very good idea.
I think Roger made a good choice on not changing this bit up too much. Some things you just can't change because it ceases to be the thing entirely. Which is why I didn't enjoy Money. But a lot of the rest of this album has actually been very good. Would I have liked this 15 years ago at the same time as hearing the original Dark Side of the Moon? No. No. Maybe I'm just old and cynical as well.
Eclipse was the closing song on Dark Side of the Moon, and it was a very big crescendo. Every single line, something got added and added and added until it was like this great big, almost celebratory kind of sound towards right at the end. And as an outro to a concept album, I was like, this is perfect. I don't think it can be improved upon. Sure enough, in Redux, it hasn't been improved upon. Not that Roger was trying to improve upon it, he was just interpreting it differently. He could have made it a little bit more dramatic, he could have brought in more orchestral elements, I think. It was missing some of that. But it was okay, but kind of a almost disappointment. That's a bit harsh. It just didn't have all of the effect and power that I was hoping for to conclude an album. Even if it is more human, even if it is more stripped back, even if it is a reimagining, there was just a lot less to it, and I think that was to its detriment. Doesn't sound bad, just could sound better. Especially considering the magnitude of the event that he is doing here, which is reimagining Dark Side of the Moon. That's a big thing, right? That's not something you should just do casually. You've got to put a lot in when you do something like this.
There isn't really a dark side of the moon. Matter of fact, it's all dark. I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I was going to. I went into this fully expecting it to be quite like Money Redux, which, as you know, I was not a huge fan, wherever the little eye icon is here. And even listening to it in the context of the album, because it is a concept album, still, no, did not work. But all of the other songs, for the most part, were actually really good. I really enjoyed the reimagining. I think he did well with keeping the elements of the original and bringing them with that kind of 80-year-old cynicism. I think it was a good move that he did this. I'm glad he did this, but I cannot give it any more than probably a 7 or 8 out of 10, and I'll be honest, that will depend on my mood. There were some overuses within that album, like the theremin was a good idea, and then he just kept on using it and using it and using it, and it was like, okay, this has kind of lost its impact, because the theremin is a very cool instrument, but when you use it most of your songs, it's not a cool instrument, it's a repetition. Let me know what you think down in the comments of the thing as a whole. I urge you to listen to it from start to finish as its own piece. We are going to compare it to the original Dark Side of the Moon, and that's absolutely fine, but do give it a try. Apart from money. A quick apology to Roger. I did think that he had actually lost maybe all of his marbles after hearing Money Redux. I'm willing to backtrack on that, say overall, I think he still has most of them.